Hello, everyone. Welcome back to East Coast Haunts. I'm MK,
And I'm Sam.
and today we're going to be wrapping up part four of the Amityville Horror. It's going to be the ending to the Lutz Family haunting. We're going to discuss if we think it's a hoax or not. Sam, I'm going to present you both sides. I'm pretty sure I know, not that I know, but I know what I think. And so I'm going to give you the reasons for people thinking that it's a hoax and the reasons for people thinking that it wasn't a hoax. And I'm going to see what you think. And then we're going to see if we kind of are on the same page. As of right now, where do you stand?
As you know, because this is actually the third time we've recorded this. I don't know if we've been having like some demon, like something is messing with the platform that we always used to record has not been working. So we are on Zoom now. And hopefully this will be better. But
Fingers
as you
crossed.
know, as you know from the last two times, I am slightly leaning towards this being a hoax. And I don't know if that's what I would have thought, that I would have ended up choosing at the beginning because everything seemed super creepy and I guess kind of believable in the beginning, but the farther we get into it, the more I'm seeing that there was definitely a motive for money here because it became a book and it became a super successful movie. So I don't know. I'm a little bit of a pessimist in this, or a not a pessimist. I don't know. I'm healthily skeptical, I think, of the whole
Okay.
situation. So, but I'm open to it. I mean, if you present me with facts or with stories that change my mind, then I will be also happy to say that I don't think it's a hoax at the end. So it really depends on what you're going to tell me over these next couple minutes.
That's very fair. Okay, so since we have to do this on Zoom, we're being limited time-wise, so let's just get right into it. The
All right.
last the last we left off with George and Kathy, they had decided to bless the house on their own. They did kind of like an impromptu like exorcism, which is really not a good idea if you're not
Little
authorized.
DIY exorcism.
Yeah, exactly. A 5 minute crafts, if you will, exorcism, where they just took their their crucifix and they walked around the house in the different rooms, and they were interrupted more so by a chorus of screaming voices screaming, "Will you stop?" at them. So not a great time.
At
So
least they asked.
you know what? Yeah, you're right. At least they asked before sending in the big kahunas, as we'll see this episode. They send in like the what do you call those boys? Like the big guys, the backups. What do you call them?
Henchmen?
I don't know. The like I don't know what I'm trying to say. They send in the big kahunas is what's really the spirit realm has decided that it's done messing around, so they're gonna send in their strongest players, is what I'm trying to
Fair
say
enough.
here.
Fair enough.
So, um, let's go to January 9th, 1976, and Father Mancuso. Oh, also just a note, I do know that Father Mancuso is not the priest's real name. It's readily available online, but I didn't want to share with everyone because I didn't know if it was a privacy issue or omitted for a certain reason. So if you really want to find his name, it's out there online. I'm just not going to share it on the podcast. So Father Mancuso relays the updates to the chancellors that we talked about in the last episode, Chancellors Ryan and Nuncio, and they agree with his brilliant take that the Lutz family should vacate the house as soon as possible, but to relay the message to them over the phone.
Bro, I feel like they
Enough.
have had this exact cycle like 12 times.
It is very, it's a very repetitive thing, but the Lutz family just doesn't seem to be listening to them. So there's really
Yeah.
not much these guys can do. So Kathy and George are now wide awake in their house. They have not slept after their makeshift exorcism gone wrong. And Father Mancuso calls and he hears about their now makeshift exorcism, and he warns them not to evoke anything in the name of Jesus Christ for fear of angering them and to just get the hell out of this house. But as he's giving this warning, George is interrupted by Kathy screaming on the other line. He has to hang up.
Oh.
So this is one of those things where you're like, okay, this is a little outlandish. Like, this could be a hoax. But the walls had begun to ooze green slime.
Okay.
So, so
Oh,
you know the scene in
Nickelodeon act.
Ghostbusters when they're running around the hotel and Slimer is just like throwing up on the walls.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I imagine this like.
Okay.
So it looks like jello.
Okay. Ew, that's nasty.
And what's
It's like
worse,
the Kids' Choice Awards.
exactly. That's exactly what it looked like. George like tasted it, which I don't think I would recommend. Like you don't know what
What
that
you do
is. You don't know if that's poison.
maybe give it a sniff, but let's not taste it because even if it's not something supernatural, it's
You don't know
probably
what that
a
is.
toxin.
Or like sewage. Yeah. And he said it tasted like nothing. So Kathy's had
Okay.
it up to here. She's like,
Yeah.
we gotta go, which caused George to fly into like a fit of rage, which was not like him. So he ran into every room screaming and demanding that the spirits get out, which woke the kids up, and they all huddled with Kathy by the fireplace. And this whole outburst, him running from room to room, was also witnessed by Sergeant Al Gianfredo, who was on rounds in the neighborhood and could see him in the windows. So he was like, you know what? That seems like a family affair. Not going to get involved, but, just make a little mental note of it.
Okay.
So
Maybe
eventually,
he should have gotten involved.
I think they might have just wanted to do a little wellness check, right?
Yeah, domestic disputes are called in all the time, right? Like why?
You
Well, whatever. Whatever.
you would hope so. I
They're
don't know.
bigger.
So eventually, Kathy just went to bed, where she was overtaken by a strong urge to bless the house again. She had to like kind of fight it. And George was reading the Bible in the living room. And he began to feel really hot. And that's when he looked up and he saw the flames in the fireplace reaching for him. So
Bro.
he gets up, like, to get away from it. And as suddenly as it started, he starts to feel freezing. And he turns and he looks over his shoulder and he sees like a cold mist, like kind of the one that you would see on a cold morning, going up the stairs and leading into Missy's room. So he obviously runs up the stairs and he throws the door open, and her room is absolutely freezing. All the windows are open, and don't forget it's January. So he screamed and woke Kathy up, who went to go check on the boys, who were also in an absolutely freezing room. And they were quite literally, all three of them, freezing to death. Like, that's how
Oh
cold
my
these rooms were. So
wow.
parents grab them, put them in Kathy and George's bed to like warm them up, and they all kind of sleep together as a family. And from here on out, they kind of are all sleeping in the master bedroom.
Okay.
Safety in numbers.
Yeah, fair enough.
So January 10th, Kathy's mother comes back for a visit, and Kathy wants her opinion on some welts that had been appearing on her abdomen, and they kind of appeared overnight, and they were like in the form of slashes. So it looked like slashes, but they were almost welted up like a burn, um,
Oh,
which is really weird. And then when Kathy's mother went to go touch one of them, she burnt her finger.
okay. Come on now. It's time to go.
It is time
It's
to
been
go.
time to go.
And so this is the start of like a severe paranoia for Kathy. She felt like someone was constantly watching her whenever she was like naked in her room. So
Ooh.
I know, very creepy. And now you and I are going to laugh at this next part just because we know now that this is like probably the last thing you should do if you're ever in a haunted house. But it's the 70s. We don't really know a whole lot about demonology. It's not like a super popular like genre, Really the first horror movies had just started coming out, like The Exorcist was about to come out. Jaws had just come out the last year, but this wasn't like a very popular thing in like mainstream media.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. George went to the library and he checks out a book on demons. And
Weirdo.
he spent the entire night trying to read their names out loud,
Oh,
pronounce their names.
bro. George.
So
Come on,
this
sweetie.
is just a disclaimer for everyone listening to the podcast. If you're ever in an area where you think demons may possibly be present, or even, not be present, don't say their names out loud. Don't test fate. Same kind of thing with a Ouija board. You don't need to find out. Trust me.
Exactly. I don't want to find out. I don't need to find out.
This is to censor my language a little bit, screw around and find out. They're about to find out. Trust. So
Oh,
he tells Father Mancuso, who like obviously freaks out, and he's like, "Don't do that. Get out of the house." So
Father Mancuso is not getting paid enough. I don't know what
no,
his
he's
salary
really
is, but
not. No,
yeah.
this man needs a long vacation.
Seriously.
And so Kathy, who had been sleeping, she slept most of the day awake. She didn't feel very good after the welts. She woke, no sign of anything on her abdomen, and she had reported dreams of having an affair with someone who was not George. So
Scandal.
interesting. So it absolutely begins downpouring, and Kathy asks Danny to go upstairs and shut the sewing room window, and it slams down on his hands. So he screams out in pain. They're like, "We got to take him to the hospital," and his fingers were actually crushed to the point that they were flat. So like,
Oh my God. From a
yeah.
window?
Yeah, it was a very heavy window, like a very heavy window pane.
Oh.
So they take him to the hospital, and despite these fingers being like as close to two-dimensional as fingers can get, he had absolutely no broken bones. Isn't
So
that
then,
weird?
so then how were they two-dimensional? Right?
No one knows. And it like supposedly sort of like healed itself like on the way back from the hospital.
So just like the welts on Kathy's abdomen?
Exactly.
That is
So,
very,
very
very odd.
strange. So, next day, January 11th, 1976, George is awoken at 6:30 a.m. to rain on his face. The entire family had slept through every single door in the house, torn off its hinges, and every single window in the house smashed.
Oh, wow.
And the family had discussed the previous night about finally leaving the house. And now this has completely delayed their departure because the rain has soaked through everything and they need to repair it. So now they're working as a family to repair the damage, and all of them are kind of like pissed off now. And they've kind of taken on an air of defiance, like, how dare these demons tell us what to do? And even Harry the dog, who had been kind of like sleepy and kind of lazing about ever since moving into the house, he was the most alert and on watch they had been since they moved in.
Wow. So I'm wondering at this point, like, whatever entity is in this house, like, does it want them to stay at this point, or does it want them to leave? Because now it seems like they want to keep the family there.
It does kind of seem like there's opposing forces there. So to me, it seems like the spirits want them out, and it seems like a demonic presence wants them to stay so it can kind of like feed off their energy. Does that make sense?
Okay.
That's
that makes
what
sense.
my speculation would be for this house.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Of course. So George had spoken with George Kekaris, who is the guy from the Paranormal Institute that he had called upon Father Mancuso's recommendation. And he suggested using Harry as kind of like a paranormal activity detector. So they walked around the house with him on like a lead, and he refused to enter 3 rooms. Do you want to guess what 3 rooms they are?
Yes, I would love to guess. Is it the sewing room?
Yes, that's one of them.
The red room?
Yep.
And like maybe what was the third? Was there another one upstairs that was kind of sketchy? Is it the room that Jody was in, maybe?
Yes, Missy's room. You got them.
Okay.
All 3.
Yay!
Very good.
Thank you.
So that kind of freaked the parents out. So the whole family fell asleep in the master bedroom, and they quickly fell asleep. Great.
Okay.
So a little bit after midnight on January 12th, George was shoved awake by his entire family, claiming that he had been screaming in his sleep that he was coming unglued, which is a very
Ooh.
weird, that's a very weird phrase to use, sleepwalking or not, or sleep talking and not sleep talking.
Like,
You
sir,
know,
what do you mean by that?
no idea, but he's coming unglued. Okay, interesting. So
Noted.
Missy pipes up and she's like, Daddy, come to my room. Jody wants to talk.
Enough! Enough!
So
Missy's like a little bit annoying, low key. I'm just gonna say it.
she kind of like exacerbated, I think, some of the problems in this house, but it wasn't her fault. She was just a little girl.
Yeah, I
She
guess she was like a
thought,
child.
she was like, oh my God, this house that I moved into has a magical talking pig. Slay. Um, cool.
Exactly what she was like.
Exactly. So she's like, Dad, come to my room. Jody wants to talk to you. And her dad, remember, has not talked to uh like the mom so much about this pig other than when they saw the glowing red eyes
Right.
outside. But now they're kind of like in the same room and Missy's explaining who Jody is, and both of them kind of make the connection to when they saw the like glowing red eyes and the hoof marks outside in the snow. So George runs to her room where she's waiting for him. And he's like, I don't see anything. I don't see anything. She's like, oh, Jody had to step out for a second.
Okay.
George is like, oh, okay, thank God. Like she's gone or he's gone. And she's like, oh, just kidding. There he is right outside the window. And there were two glowing red eyes right outside the window.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so George screams. Kathy runs in to save the day, grabs a chair, and smashes the window with it.
Wow.
So, as clear as day, they hear a pig squeal, and all of a sudden, the glowing red eyes were gone.
Wow. That's kind of shocking that it was that easy.
Well, this is not the end of Jody.
Okay, okay, okay. I was like, wow, that was pretty. Also, wait, question. You
Yes.
said that all the windows had been like smashed in, but then like also Kathy like uses a chair to smash the windows?
Oh, I guess maybe not all of the windows had been smashed, but like a good amount of
Or,
them.
like most of them.
Yeah, like
Okay, I wasn't sure if
every
I thought I caught the Lutz family in a lie. I was like, did I just break the code?
no, I maybe that was just me misreporting. I think maybe a lot of the like downstairs windows especially had been broken because they said like
Okay.
the entire living room was soaking wet and like so was the master bedroom and the sewing room.
Okay. I thought I did some, but I was wrong.
You thought you disproved a 50-year-old mystery?
I'm the missing piece, the missing puzzle piece. Anyway.
Don't worry, Sam is on the case. So so they all go back to bed, and finally in the morning, they get a little bit of good news, and that is that George Kekaris will be here tomorrow, which is yay,
Ooh.
amazing. So while Kathy's on the phone with him, she's observing Missy having like a very animated conversation with someone underneath the kitchen table and feeding it, or at least offering it bites of a PB&J.
Okay.
So Kathy hangs up the phone with George, and she's like, who you talking to, Missy? And Missy's like, oh, I'm just talking to Jody. And Kathy's like, hey, Missy, remember when you asked me if angels can talk? And Missy's like, yeah. And she's like, is Jody an angel? Is that why you asked me that? And Missy said, yeah. He told me that he was an angel. And Kathy was like, well, does it look like the one that we put on top of the Christmas tree? And Missy's like, no, Jody's a pig. And she's like, well, what do you and Jody do? Do you guys play games? And Missy's like, no, but he tells me about the little boy who used to live in my room. He got sick and he died. And Kathy's like, oh? And Missy continues and she's like, Jody says I'm going to live here forever so that I can play with him. So,
Okay.
so
Well, first of all, why was this conversation not had between mother and daughter like a month ago? Like when
I
she
don't
first met.
know. I guess because they finally kind of put it together last night that like maybe that there was like an actual entity that their daughter was talking to and it wasn't just
And
an
it wasn't.
imaginary friend.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And okay. Like what I'm just wondering what Jody wants because like obviously Jody is very interested in Missy, but I just don't know what the end goal is.
Well, I think it's pretty clear from this conversation that Jody wants at least Missy to stay in this house forever. So, like,
Right.
in this house.
Yeah. That's not good.
No, that to
That's
me
not ideal.
says that Jody is a demon, like
Yeah.
100%.
I'm
You
getting
know?
so freaked out right now.
And also, like, this is just another little point that, like, an argument that you could make. Um, so demons, like, technically in Catholic, I guess, mythology, are fallen angels. So if Jody's introducing himself to Missy as like an angel, it's technically like not a lie. Does that make sense?
Right. Because he was an angel.
At some point, yeah. So anyway, that's just a little side note there. So of course that concerns Kathy, and she brings it up to George that night, and they're sitting in the living room talking, discussing Jody, and Harry, who's back outside, alerts them to something in the boathouse, but when they go out there, nothing is there.
Okay.
January 13th, 3:15 a.m. George
Oh.
wakes up to the marching band again, but the family is sleeping through it. Somehow he falls back asleep through all the racket, and Kathy wakes George up a short while later, claiming that he was screaming in languages she could not identify until she touched him, and then he stopped screaming and said, "It's in Chris's room," which is really freaky. But the next
Yeah.
morning, they talk to Chris, and he tells them that he had to go upstairs to use the bathroom, although that he was sleeping in their room because for some reason their bathroom was locked. And when he got upstairs, he could see through the floor into the master bedroom.
Wow. What?
So it was
Okay.
kind of like he was like astrally projecting. That's what I took that to mean.
Okay.
But there's never
Wow.
like an explanation given as to what that could have
That
possibly
was.
been.
Okay.
So George, that's the last straw for him. Between that and Jody, there's too many incidents with the kids. So he packs everyone up into the van. He packs Harry away, and they all get in the van, and it won't start. No
Of
matter how
course.
hard they try, full tank of gas won't start. And a torrential downpour forces them back inside. And it becomes
Okay.
unnaturally dark inside the house, which could just be the thunderstorm, but it also could just be something very sinister.
It definitely could be something sinister.
So that night, the walls begin to ooze again, that green slime,
Oh, not the ooze.
and the house heated up to 90 degrees, which is, I would
Holy.
be freaking miserable because I think I've said this before on the podcast. I can't function anything over like 75 in the house,
Yeah.
you know?
No way. No way.
I know. And so
90?
90 degrees. And so then it finally broke at around 10 p.m. and the entire house dropped to around 60 degrees, which
Holy
is freezing. For a house is 60
wow.
degrees is freezing.
Wow. Oh my gosh. What is going on? Why did I like how they like decided that they were gonna leave once and for all and then the car didn't start so they didn't just like I would have just walked, right? Like can't you
Yeah.
just walk at that point?
I think
But
I would
whatever.
have. I think I would have. But finally the heat is broken, they're freezing, so they all pile into the master bedroom again. And around 1 a.m., the whole family falls asleep, but George is kind of just up thinking about everything and watching them. And he realizes that he should have left sooner and, you know, listen to Father Mancuso. And he just, without thinking, says, "God help us." So,
And that's him invoking Jesus, right?
so, oh, I'm sorry, I misspoke. Kathy, George, and Missy were all in the master bedroom, but Danny and Chris were in their upstairs bedroom.
Okay.
So as soon as he says, God help us, Kathy, still sleeping, lifts her head to look in the mirror. And that's another creepy thing about this house is that the master bedroom has mirrors on every wall from floor to ceiling.
Oh wow.
So,
That's a design choice.
horrible design choice, freaky. And they also say that you should never have, like, I don't know if you believe in this, but you should never have two mirrors facing each other because it can create a portal. We've talked about that.
I have heard that, yeah.
Yeah. So that could be part of it. We don't know. She lifts her head and goes to look in the mirror. She gets out of bed and she starts to head for the hallway, but Harry is blocking her path.
Okay.
And George gets up and he wrestles her back into bed, but Harry now has gotten up and begins to like retch and throw up.
Aww.
I know. So he's kind of going through it. George, who has now gotten back into bed after cleaning up the throw up, is now alerted to a noise on the third floor. And it sounded like the boys' beds were sliding back and forth on the ground. So like kind of
that would be a really gross sound. I don't like that.
Yeah, like almost like nails on a chalkboard, but like a million times worse.
Right, exactly.
So George tries to get out of bed to check what's going on, but he can't get out of bed. And he's just kind of like restrained. He just has no strength to get out of bed. And all of a sudden, he feels like someone is stepping on him, but it's not feet. It's like hooves. It's a lot more concentrated than feet. And he can kind of feel like the hoof, I guess, like nails. Hoof
Yeah.
nails? I don't know, pressing into his chest and his arms.
Oh, wow. That must be a weird sensation.
Yeah. So he's laying there and he can hear all the doors and all the drawers in the house begin to slam. And he says that he passed out from fright, but he came to with Danny and Chris standing over him, shaking him awake and saying that there was something in their room.
Oh, no.
And that something was a faceless monster that tried to get them, but they ran away. So now George has regained his strength. He's able to get out of bed and he goes to the staircase. And at the top of the stairs was a figure completely cloaked in white pointing at him. So, where have we seen exactly, but in white? Where have we seen this before? Well, I'll tell you.
Okay, yeah, tell me.
Remember when Kathy and George were sitting in the living room and the fire started to like freak out the first time and it burned the image of a cloaked white figure into the back of the fireplace? Yeah.
Okay.
So that's it. That's a wrap. Whole family and Harry run for the van and they speed out of the driveway. They desert the house at 7 a.m. on January 14th and they never went back. They went to go stay at Kathy's mother's and everyone was relieved until a trail of green slime appeared on her stairs.
No. No.
So
no.
That's it. So now I'm gonna give you like the post haunting little tale that I have for you.
Yes, please.
Okay. February 18th, so about a month after they moved out, there was a team of 5 that held a seance. Psychics Mary Pascarella and Albert Riley, George Kekaris, and Ed and Lorraine Warren.
Okay.
So, after they held a seance at 3:30 a.m., and immediately Riley began to have heart palpitations and shortness of breath. Kekaris was violently ill and had to leave. And I'm going to quote Lorraine Warren and what she had to say about this house. She said, well, and this is still from the book, The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson. She said, quote, "Whatever is here, in my estimation, most definitely of a negative nature. It has nothing to do with anyone who had once walked the earth in human form. It is right from the bowels of the earth." So pretty clear to me that it's a demon, right?
Right.
She has detected a demon in this house, but it's argued to be one of the most clearest, one of the most clearest,
One of the most clear.
one of the most clear um, photographs ever taken that proves, quote unquote, paranormal activity was going on in this house. And it is of a little boy peeking around a doorway, and it was taken immediately after the seance. I'll post it on Instagram. To me, it's pretty convincing, but that could just be wishful thinking. I'll see what you guys think.
Okay. Oh,
And now
I'm honestly nervous to even look at it.
and now just to follow up on the family and some of the more important characters. Good Friday of 1976, Father Mancuso recovered from his little bout of pneumonia, and he transferred to a parish that is far away from Amityville.
That's smart.
Good.
Smart man.
Good for him. I'm happy for him. Missy still won't talk about Jody. It like freaks her out to this day. But Danny and Chris can and will describe the entity that chased them from their room. Kathy won't talk about the house at all. And George still insists that it was real, and he warns other people about buying houses that are haunted or could be infested with demons. So that's the Amityville Horror. Now let me take you into some of the claims as to whether or not it could be a hoax.
Okay.
So after the whole ordeal, George and Kathy met with William Weber, who was, if we remember, Ronnie DeFeo's attorney, to discuss a dual book proposal on the murders and then also the haunting, but they didn't want the proceeds going to DeFeo, which is kind of contradictory because they initially contacted Weber because they believed that they could provide some insight as to the effect the house may have had on DeFeo.
Right, okay.
So they kind of were under the impression that maybe they could back up his insanity plea. But they left this deal because they said they felt pressured by Weber. Weber says that he believes that they were trying to make a commercial venture and that he believes that nothing in the house happened. Okay. So they instead went to Jay Anson. They never signed a contract with him. So even though the book sold 6 million copies and the film was a huge box office success, they only made about 300,000. So it does sound like a lot of money, but 6 million copies and a huge box office hit to make $3,000 in today's money is like, I want to say not that much.
Did you say 300,000 or 3,000?
300,000.
Okay.
It's like,
yeah, because I was gonna say if it was 3,000, I would be like, bro. But yeah, 300,000, yeah, it's a hefty sum. But you're right. If you were to calculate how much the book made and how much the movie made, it would probably be a very, very, very small percentage of that, right?
Exactly. So that for me kind of casts out a financial motive. But George has admitted that some of the scenes in the movie and the book were blown out of proportion just to get it to sell, and honestly, they don't seem like that blown out of proportion. The one example that he gave was the green slime on the walls were actually only gobs of a gelatin-like substance that were found on the rug. So still kind of weird. It's not quite green slime oozing down the walls, and they didn't find green slime dripping from the mom's staircase,
Okay, yeah.
However, more mediums had visited the house in past years, and most of them mimicked the same story of a Native American burial ground or like isolation area, but local tribes have shown doubt in this story. Most of them, while not denying like the historical use of the land, say that this story kind of like paints their tribe in a bad picture, that they would even have spirits that would like possess people. So it's not a story that they like getting passed around. And finally, one of the other points that are made about the whole thing being a hoax is that DeFeo actually came out in prison and admitted to lying about the voices to pad his insanity plea. So,
Okay.
what do you think? You've got 3 minutes before the Zoom call runs out.
Okay. Long story short, I don't know. Now I don't know. Now I don't know. I do think that there is a solid case for both. I can see why. I can totally see why someone would make this up for money and or it was started off as like a couple of little weird occurrences that got blown out of proportion. But I can also see where this would really be something that happened, especially with such a tragic backstory with the DeFeo murders. So
Exactly.
I'm gonna say I know that this is a lame answer. I genuinely don't know. I don't know. I have no idea.
I don't think it's my personal belief.
Yeah, let me
I
hear.
don't think it's a black and white thing. I do think, obviously, George came out and said a lot of the things were blown out of proportion. I don't think that many mediums and that many self-proclaimed spiritualists could have gone into this house and come out with the same story unbiased without there actually having being something underlying this house. I do think a lot of it was probably dramatized for the media,
Right.
but I do think that this house was haunted. And I do think that that picture of the little boy, I'll send it to you right after this episode. I think that that is a very solid piece of proof. I think a lot of the things with Jody and Missy's conversation with her or with him doesn't like it lines up too well for a 5-year-old to be making this up. You know,
Right.
there's just a lot of there's too many occurrences for me to explain them all away. So I
Right.
think something happened in this house. Do I think that green slime oozed from the wall and a ceramic lion bit George's ankle? No, I don't. I do think there was some kind of weird energy in this house, though.
Okay, I think I completely agree. I think that's the perfect way to wrap it up. Like, yes, there was something. It didn't go maybe exactly as the story goes, like you just said, but something happened here. Something weird.
Exactly. So, everyone, you're going to have to let us know your thoughts. We got to wrap this episode up, but please let us know what you thought of this series. If you want us to do more longer series like this, just let us know. Till next time, babies, stay spooky, and we're just two ghouls
Keep it
creeping it
real.
real. Exactly.
Exactly. All right.
Bye.
Bye.